Hi there, this is Amy Nash with Lioness Creative and the Lioness Foundation. And today I'm here on behalf of our podcast and recording of Ask Amy and Brian. You are only getting Amy today. So Brian is busy with a number of different calls and connections around the world. And he's also very rooted in an art project about Real Men Wear Pink. And it's about heroes in our lives that are cancer survivors. And he engaged with a wonderful artist, Lauren Starling, who is just a fantastic artist, fantastic human, and it's just a really great project. And so I thought today I would talk on our behalf, anyway, on corporate social responsibility and also a little bit on project management, because those are some connections that seem to make a great bit of sense to me to overlap. And I wanted to just share that a little bit, and it's very relevant to some of the work that Brian's doing as well, and all of the work that I do. So let's just get into that a little bit, and we'll keep this a little short today to just give you some connections and some dots connecting in your head, and you can kind of go from there. So short story. Recently, the last couple weekends, I have done a crash course on preparing for the project management exam. And it is done by a really great organization that does a lot of training. And they go through all of the different pieces and parts of project management to make sure that we understand it from a global perspective and understand it from a scale perspective. So anything from a small project to a very large, complex project, it really does have a lot of the same elements to it. You just combine them for certain efficiencies, but you still have to address all of the things. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about that. I am pursuing that because I have done a ton of project management over the course of my career in multiple organizations and in the architecture world and all of those kinds of things. But when you start translating that to business planning and more of the consulting work and project work that I do now, it is helpful to have some of the certifications to just show that that is the practice. So if you know of people that have those credentials, definitely give them kudos, because it is very intense and there are lots of pieces and parts to it. True project managers that are going through all the elements of things really can get into some amazing amount of detail on efficiency equations and just a lot of great depth and breadth really to the field. So I wanted to highlight that. And so it's challenging for me. I'm in the study phase of that to prep for the exam, but it was eye-opening. And so the takeaway from that, if you're not doing that, is to just understand what it is. And so project management, and I'm looking off to another screen here at a graphic that we have made, is almost all communication, teamwork, facilitation, and really helping with pulling together the resources of projects in a particular way to get impacts and results. And so the resources include people, of course. So a whole lot of it is HR and the communication piece of that. And then obviously budget and dollars and resources of things, and time is definitely a resource. So these are all things that we talk about a lot in business and nonprofits and organizations in managing all of those things. The stuff of what you're doing could be anything from, building a rocket on down to a widget to creating some impact in your community like a nonprofit would. So what is very adaptable to the entire process. So project management is really about those big processy things and principles of practice. And then you can refine those processes to make sure that they work well for your project. Hopefully that makes sense. But back to elements of it, a lot of communication, teamwork. Obviously, when you're trying to get something done, you have to leverage all of those things. You're going to look at time and setting goals and milestones and working that plan. So you create a plan and then you work it. So there's a little strategy to the order of things to make sure that that's efficient. And those are some of those second nature things that we understand in the building world, because you're going to build things in a particular order. You can't put the roof on when you don't have walls. Some things are just logical and work in a particular way, but you can break that down into tiny little layers. I'm speaking at it from a, kind of a funny standpoint of that, but you can picture that in your head. So things do have to have a particular order of construction or order of process. You manage risks, you look at problem solving. Every piece and part of that is problem solving. It's a big thing that we do at Lioness Creative, is we're working through problem solving kinds of things in a very agile and design thinking way. So the essence of project management is really strategy, organization, executing that, developing systems and plans, analyzing how well they work, measuring that, and ongoing. And that can come in a little bit different order depending on how you're processing that. So now we flip over to corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility is your connection to the community, and how do you give back or make a positive impact and still do business. Nonprofits can also have elements of corporate social responsibility. I mean, that's really the essence of what they do, but you can also support other nonprofits and other kind of sister programs, so to speak, complementary programs that also lift the whole. So it is very adaptable in that world as well. Social venture organizations that are kind of doing the hybrids of both are really living in the world of understanding corporate social responsibility from the get-go. So how we look at the elements of corporate social responsibility, much like in project management, we have some buckets that have to be hit with that. And most of the time you're wanting to make a good impact and you have a long-term goal or a long-term impact that you're trying to make. You're doing that with sincerity. So there's a lot of ethics and sincerity pieces of that, your values, that are really rooted in what you're trying to do. Very rarely do you have your organization or your business pick something that's completely off base from the work that you do. Usually they have some degree of complementariness to it, or your story might connect because of personal experience or somebody you know. So there's usually a linkage that makes sense. And then you're standing on really good foundation of why you're doing that. So the ethics of doing this for a really good reason, and having that be an essence of your values or a core piece of your values is really required in it. To do good just for the sake of doing it without any of the linkage kind of misses the point of corporate social responsibility, simply because your goals and your impacts and your metrics probably aren't going to have quite as much weight or quite as much depth to them. Because when our hearts lead that and our heads lead that, more so than just logic on a piece of paper, it'll yield better results. We as humans just work better in that. But other elements of CSR are involved just, having an understanding of the market and the needs. So your impacts and your metrics fill a void, or they fill a need, or they lift the whole properly. It has an amount of responsibility to it. So it's not turning a blind eye to the needs and picking something else. It's really about finding the right fit. There's definitely the management of goals and time and metrics. So those are very project management tied things. Leveraging resources. So people, money, time, all of that as managing resources. And then there's a level of sustainability. And sustainability has two different layers to that. Often CSR programs are very environmentally sustainable, and environmental sustainability has people and sociology as a piece of that, economics and money as a piece of it, and then the earth. So often the 3 Ps are what are referred to as people, planet, and profit. So there is a balance of that. And when you have a nice balance where they all make sense, that's sustainability. So often CSR programs and connections and policies and things in organizations will focus on that because it hits 3 areas very well. The other piece of that word sustainability is it going to last? So why start a program that isn't going to last and be just a short-term thing? So that definitely is something that has to be kept in mind. So now for the connection portion. And I talk really fast in this because I kind of just want to get it out and get you thinking and get you on your way. But the connection between the two and having project management and corporate social responsibility link is the fact that the work of them is similar. you're managing impacts, you're managing resources. And I kind of started alluding to that at the end. The goals, having some sustainability and lasting effects of that means that you're managing those goals well and your resources well. You have a long-term plan with that, and there's usually long-term impacts of project management work. Project management is very heavy in ethics and code of conduct and really doing things well to a high caliber. And you really don't want to take on things in the CSR world without having a very strong sense of how you're going to make a difference in a positive way and have that last. So there are a lot of different layers to that. You also need a project management in some way in order to make your corporate social responsibility program work well. It doesn't make sense to just do little events and little things and call it CSR. It really has to be rooted into the work of your organization and have a way to market that well, to tell that story well for the standpoint of the work you're doing, as well as the impacts you're making. So you really want to tell that story well, which is a big piece of the documenting process in project management. So there's so many little ties. We could just almost overlay it and draw some connections. And I really wanted you to have the takeaway of who do you have in your organization that is really the best person to take on looking through your CSR policy and making that happen. What are you doing now in your organization that does give back to the community? And are you measuring the impacts well and managing that amongst your time and resources so that it's just an ongoing piece of what you do, and it isn't something that draws away from your organization, instead it enhances it. So it's really using PM principles to make your CSR work well. So I pose those questions to you to think about that a little bit. What do you do that is responsible and pulls in helping your community, no matter what kind of entity you are? And how do you manage that well and keep that process ongoing with a long-term commitment to good impacts, where you're leveraging your resources well, setting goals, making those goals, and making good impacts in the community? And operationally, how does that get done? So think about that today. So I'm posing a question back to you rather than having you pose all the questions to us. And if anything inspires you in that or gets you thinking a little bit about that, please let us know and ask some questions. I know Brian, because he is rooted in this project for the community, these are all in the forefront of his head. It's always in the forefront of mine and the work that I do. So we're happy to discuss those things. Happy to answer your questions. Happy to discuss it further just to help get you on track if that's what you're looking to do. If you have no CSR policy or you have none of those things that you're working through and want to explore that, we're great at being thinking partners to see how that might look and how that might work. And then if you do have one and maybe need it recalibrated, we're also very good at that as well. So, and happy to just converse to get you on track. So those are things we love to see the community get enhanced. We love to see businesses get rooted in that. We love to see nonprofits do better and feel stronger. So we definitely have our hearts and our heads and our hands involved in a lot of those different areas. And we hope that we can help you make some of those connections. So thank you for your time. Again, it's Ask Amy and Brian, but just Amy today. You'll get Brian back next week. And we'll post some tough questions to him to make sure that he shares some of his, maybe some of the story of the art project and how some community connections and strategy work together. So that is what we're talking about today. That's what we want you thinking about this week. And then we will post some of those questions back next week. Thanks. This is Amy Nash with Lioness Creative and the Lioness Creative Podcast and Ask Amy and Brian. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.